delight to have the opportunity to meet with you this afternoon and what I hope will be a delightful discourse. That is, a conversation upon any subject that you would like to put forth for our general interest, a conversation directed by your questions, an open and free inquiry, which has always been my greatest delight, and which is what we must never ever neglect as the American citizenry, because it is the public conversation, it is the public debate more than anything else, which will continue to preserve, protect, and defend our natural rights. And I hope we well understand that these are the rights that are given to us not only as Americans, these are the rights that are given to the family of man across this globe, not by any government and not by any chief magistrate. These are the rights that are given to us by nature and nature's God. So how well we incur his favor, engage his benevolence when we engage these rights, or rest you assured if we do not, well then we may lose them. So I welcome this opportunity for the engaging of that right, that you might put forth your questions. But if you would allow, firstly I should like to provide my opinions on certain subjects. And the first and foremost of which is, as I entered here this day, for those of you I have not met before nor seen before, I am overwhelmed to see that we've long since dispensed with monarchical habits and customs. The President of the United States enters here amongst us today, and you all remain seated. And that is how it should be. No monarch has walked in amongst us today, and were they to do so, we would greet them just the same. You, the American citizenry, should be seated to your pleasure and your leisure, for you hold the reins of our government, while as your public servant I should remain standing here in your presence. It has been several days in the saddle since I have left Washington City with the object to return here to this particular vicinage for when I was last here in October of 1783. It did not have the great arsenal that we are seeing every day now being improved upon, employed here. In fact, that was not begun until about 8 years ago in 1799. We finally began to construct the arsenal, though it had been appropriated through the executive, that is President Washington, and our Congress in 1794 in the Arsenal Act. This is one of two of our nation's arsenals, federal arsenals. I presume you know where the other is located? In Springfield, in Massachusetts Bay. You're absolutely right. I think this is quite a natural location for, particularly with the confluence of the Shenandoah with the Potomac River, and the fact that the Potomac continues then southwards onto Washington City. In fact, when I was here back in October of '83, my effort was to make my way up to Philadelphia. I was taking the furthest west travel that I had ever taken in my entire life. And I will tell you, as of this year of 1707, I have never been further west in these United States or upon this continent than I am right now. I have never been south of the Carolina line, though I have been further up north, even beyond Boston, to Lynn and Salem, Massachusetts, and as well have traveled through various of the kingdoms of Europe, particularly all throughout France. But this was the furthest west that I ventured, coming up from Charlottesville, ultimately by way of the west bank of the Shenandoah River. I stayed with Mr. Harper for several days there in his house up the hill, and I will never forget being astounded with the natural beauty and wonders of this location. I then ventured up a little beyond the cemetery, out onto a prominence there that many had referred to as the Indian Rock, and sitting upon that Indian rock, I could not help but inscribe my thoughts, which perhaps some of you have read in my notes on the state of Virginia, a work which I may tell you is ever in flux. Were I to have the opportunity to go back to what I inscribed in that work, I should make changes and alterations and further annotations. That is, were I have the time. But I happened to bring along what I wrote about that occasion when I sat up on the rock, and I share with you these opinions and descriptions before I venture on into a short history of what brought about the expedition I commissioned to the west of this nation. But firstly, as I inscribed in my notes, the passage of the Potomac through the Blue Ridge is perhaps one of the most stupendous scenes in nature. You stand on a very high point of land, and on your right comes up the Shenandoah, having ranged along the foot of the mountain 100 miles to seek a vent. On your left approaches the Potomac in quest of a passage also. At the moment of their junction, they rush together against the mountain, rend it asunder, and pass off unto the sea. The first glance of this scene hurries our senses into the opinion that this earth has been created in time, that the mountains were formed first, that the rivers began to flow afterwards, that in this place particularly they have been dammed up by the Blue Ridge of mountains and have formed an ocean which filled the whole valley, that continuing indeed to rise, they have at length broken over this spot and have torn the mountain down from its summit to its base. The piles of rock on each hand, but particularly on the Shenandoah, the evident marks of their disruption and avulsion from their beds, from the most powerful agents of nature, all corroborate this impression of a time, perhaps millennium, to its final effect. You cross the Potomac above the junction, pass along its side through the base of the mountain for 3 miles, its terrible precipices hanging in fragments over you, and within about 20 miles you reach Fredericktown and the fine country about it. This scene is worth a voyage across the Atlantic. I think it is one of the most stupendous that we have in our nation, and I hope that some of you have already heard various likenesses and prints that are available that you might have this hanging upon your parlor walls or that within your dining chambers.